Good day, everybody. In today's content, we focus on Hbar with some recent bullish news of an ETF approval. Is this one of the catalysts that could send the project towards $1.80? Do stay tuned. Nothing that I say is financial advice. Let's dive into the content. So I have this fractal breakdown here for Hbar, where we have this macro level of ascending support, which was created on the January 2020 lows. And you can see that we had a second point of contact in November of 2024, which is where this catapult of a run took place. Now, what I'm actually looking for here is a similar replication of this move from 2020 leading into sort of 2021, late September. And what we actually had was a 5-wave move up. Now, what's important to note is that once it had a macro wave 1, it then witnessed a macro wave 2, which in fact took around from this high of about sort of 0.009. We had a correction that lasted about 335 days. Okay, now at this level here, it continued to hold a level of support on this wave 2 correction before impulsively breaking out in a macro wave 3, then entering a wave 4 to this red zone before continuing to wave 5. Now, along this journey, once Hbar actually broke out in January 2021, this blue line here, which is the 10 EMA, you can see held as support on the wave 4 correction before getting the blow off top, which created this level of ascending resistance. So you can see from its inception in September 2019, we had a point of contact, and then fast forward to the 2021 all-time high. This was the second point of contact on resistance. So far we have a point of contact on support, another point of contact on support, we have a point of contact on resistance, and another point of contact on resistance. Now, the last point of contact was back down here on this support zone, so it leads me to believe that the next or current sort of high that we're looking for on this impulsive wave leading into late Q4 2025, possibly even overturning into 2026, would be back on this macro ascending resistance line. And you can see that this creates some sort of ascending channel here. Okay, so I do believe that there's a macro blow off top missing, and where Hbar is in a very similar scenario to where it was in this wave 2 correction. So if we rinse repeat this sort of corrective move here for Hbar and bring this over towards our current correction, which by the way is in a replicated similar wave count. So from this support zone in November 2024, we had this massive breakout, which I believe to be the wave 1, and at the moment we're going through a wave 2 correction back down to this previous level of support on these highs from April of 2024, which currently sit at around 13 cents. Now, again, in regards to sort of time frames here, and if we are to rinse repeat a move, this was again a 335-day correction in the wave 2 before getting the massive wave 3 euphoria. And if we look at this wave 1 leading into wave 2, from this high, it's roughly been about 273 days. Okay, so we're still shy in regards to the duration of the previous wave 2 correction. However, you can see that the structure does look very, very similar. Okay, so what happened is we placed the wave 1 high, fell back to support, rallied up to a lower high, came back to support again, and then broke out. We've done the same in this wave 1 into wave 2. We placed a high, came back to support, placed a lower high, and now we've got this drawback, including this huge wick, which of course was the liquidation event, the largest in crypto history. But Hbar still manages to retain its key EMAs. And again, the duration of this potential correction is very similar to what it was back in sort of from March 2020 leading into November, December of 2020. And we've also got something here from January of 2025 heading into sort of October. Okay, so the time frames are kind of very similar in this instance. And as you can see, Hbar has backtested this previous red zone for support on the previous highs from April 2024. So as long as Hbar could sort of hold above these local highs in April 2024, I believe that what we're doing here is gearing up in a wave 2 correction before a macro wave 3, a potential correction in wave 4, and then a wave 5 blow off top, which brings Hbar up to targets of around $1.80. Now, of course, this target is not pulled out of thin air. The way I actually managed to achieve it was by going from the current cycle low in January, February 2023, retracing back to the all-time high. Because what Hbar is doing is going from the cycle low, trying to retrace back to the all-time high. And if Hbar can actually reclaim, I know we're still quite a distance off, guys, but again, if you just follow the wave count, if we can hold above sort of 14 cents here on the 0.50 Fibonacci, this would be a catalyst, in my honest opinion, to kickstart the move back towards all-time highs, and then the corrective wave 4, which would be very similar, again, in wave count structure to this wave 4 in the previous cycle. Okay, so if we do sort of clone this and see a rinse repeat scenario, again, this would be a sort of move where Hbar pushes up towards 83 cents, corrects back down towards sort of 45 cents, and then gets a final blow off top to the 1414 fib extension, which sits at $1.80. Okay, so this $1.83 has some confluence, one with this ascending resistance line in the channel, and also with the 1414 Fibonacci extension. Now we do also have the $3.25 $3.25 price tag, which sits at $1.68. And I know at the moment this seems very fearful. Okay, we had this large wick down, but if we look back again to previous data, we also witnessed something very similar in the past, which is where Hbar had this rally up towards sort of 0.06, and then it had a large wick correction of around 73% before retaining structure, holding support, and then breaking out. I expect, again, something similar here, where Hbar has gone through a wick correction of around 65% this time around, but is still holding above key structure, i.e. these April 2024 highs in roughly around 11, 12, 13 cents. So as long as Hbar is above this blue line, the 10 EMA, and especially this pink line, which is the 20 EMA, I see no loss of structure and just a corrective phase very similar to the prior wave 2 correction. Now this would be the telltale sign to get that macro impulsive wave. So we could see, in fact, another month or two's correction here, heading in towards sort of November, December. Looks really, really fearful, sort of pull back towards maybe 16, 15, even 14 cents as we was covering on this 0.5 fib here that could act as support, and that would be a major catalyst to get this euphoric pump up to sort of $1.80. So I do believe that we are missing a blow off top here. And again, I think there's certain signals in other charts, especially like others against Bitcoin. You know, altcoins are really in the floor, and this is a brutal time, especially for low caps. Okay, Hbar is quite a large cap project, and again, it's holding up pretty well. It's been around the block before, and I don't expect this to crash to zero, in all fairness. Again, as I said, macro structure remains as long as Hbar is above these two EMAs here, the blue 10 EMA and the monthly 20 EMA. Before, in the past, when we actually corrected just below in the wave 2, we corrected below the 10 EMA, we then got a monthly candle which just shot us up above, okay, and then we held the 10 EMA as support in the wave 4 right here on this retest before pushing into that blow off top. Again, this is where I'm expecting a similar sort of breakout for Hbar if it can hold support. So this was the final impulsive blow off top in the 2021 cycle, and if we are to replicate again a similar move, now again, of course I'm basing this off prior data, I'll break down the wave count as well in a second, but if we are to rinse repeat a similar move, you'll see that Hbar potentially could mark this blow off top at around $1.80 at the 1.4 fib extension, come up and tap this ascending resistance line after the last point of contact, which was back in November of 2024. So in that sort of scenario, all looks okay in all honesty. And I think that, again, just based on wave count, from the prior cycle low in January 2020, wave 1, wave 2 back to a key level of support, wave 3 corrected to the wave in a wave 4 to the monthly 10 EMA, and then got the final few months leading into September of 2021. Now, fast forward to this sort of, I wouldn't say it's the cycle low, because we had the cycle low in January 2023, but you can see we ran up to the monthly 10 EMA, corrected in a B wave, and then got a C wave up to sort of 13 cents. At this point, we had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave correction, which brought us back down to this ascending support line, and then we got the vertical break, just like we did back here. Okay, we came up into resistance, corrected in some sort of A, B, C, and then went for a vertical break. Right now, you can see we're in a similar structure. Okay, so I do feel like in this wave 1 that's heading into, or in a wave 2 correction, I do apologize, we've got this sort of A, B, C structure. Very, very similar to what we had in the past, where we had this A, B, C structure and then broke out. So I do believe Hbar is just trying to find its low, and it's fantastic news, of course, with the ETF. Okay, it's fantastic news, and I expect it to act as a catalyst. But at this moment in time, the market is still witnessing a downturn, and it's absolutely brutal, especially coming off the news where Trump met with Xi, and we had a trade deal, and obviously with the rate cut, you know, people are expecting the relief. They're expecting the bounce immediately. However, if we look back to the previous rate cut, immediately we saw a decline. So I think what's occurring here is another final shakeout. And as I said, as long as Hbar is above this blue and pink line, which sit between roughly 19 towards 16 cents, and in fact above this red support zone, all we're doing is creating a flipped SR in an ABC correction in a bull market. If Hbar hadn't have held this low in November and hadn't had this 3-month breakout leading into this sort of accumulation phase, you could say that right here, this whole phase for the past year has been accumulation above a previous high. So there's no structure that's actually been lost, which is why I believe this was a macro wave 1. We're in a corrective wave 2, as brutal as it seems, in this ABC, and then we're looking for the wave 3, 4, and 5 to mark the final extension. So just to take away, guys, okay, it looks fearful. You know, we've got these lower highs at the moment, which indicates depleting buying pressure. So once we actually topped out, we got this high, then we placed the lower high, which is why the last few months we're seeing this sort of rollover. But no structural support has been lost. And again, from this wave 1 high, we had a high, we then had a lower high, and we saw a few months of rollover before exploding. Very, very similar. High, lower high, few months of rollover, exploding. So I think this is the perfect setup. And again, a lot of influencers that I'm seeing on X are really turning their back away to a potential scenario like this. And I like to have a contrarian approach based simply on data. And again, there are other fundamental catalysts for Hbar. Again, the ETF listing a couple of days ago, I think is one of those catalysts. And as long as fundamental developments are building alongside structure integrity that's holding, this is the perfect storm to initially build the base here before putting in the next macro wave and rallying up towards $1.80. If anything changes and we start to see monthly closes below 16, and especially these previous lows right here of April 2025 at around 12 cents, if we see monthly closes beneath that sort of level, then I will update you, and this fractal may become invalidated. Of course, I will take ownership. But right now, I can't have that thesis because we're holding key support. So in all honesty, with this massive wick drawdown right here, when we actually place a wick like this, going from the month of where the wick was created, I like to see a retracement back down to at least 50% of the wick. So I don't believe this drawback is complete, and we could still see heading into November, possibly December, okay, we could still see another sort of 27 to 30% drawdown to the 050 on this wick retracement. So what I'm trying to say is once this wick is actually formed, retracing to 50% of the wick is a highly likely scenario, and that sits at 13 cents. So in my honest opinion, the low on this correction will be marked between 15 to 12 cents. You've got the 0382, the 050, and the 0618. The 0382, I think, has a potential to hold. The 050 is more than likely, and the 0618 would be max pain. That's as simple as I can put it. So as long as Hbar is above these Fibonacci retracement levels in this correction, I have no concerns and still see the valid targets of pushing towards $1.80. If anything changes, I will update you guys. Thank you for tuning in. From Chart Nerd TA, take care. Peace out.